It was supposed to be just another night on late-night television, the kind that blends monologue jokes, celebrity charm, and a few self-deprecating laughs into a familiar comfort cocktail for American audiences easing into sleep. But what unfolded between Jane Fonda and Jimmy Kimmel shattered every template of polished banter and passive interviews, turning a scripted appearance into a raw and unapologetic confrontation that no one, least of all the production crew, saw coming. Jane Fonda, a towering figure in the history of Hollywood and activism, had arrived on the set with a look that carried no intention of performance, only purpose. Her body language unmistakably resolute as she took her seat opposite the host, ready to discuss climate justice, political hypocrisy, and the failures of celebrity culture to act as anything more than a decorative conscience. But when Jimmy Kimmel leaned in with a chuckle and said, "So, Jane, do you ever think maybe you've done enough marching for one lifetime?" It was as though he had unknowingly flipped a switch that unleashed not just a retort but a reckoning. Because Jane's eyes didn't blink or soften, they narrowed just enough to show she'd heard him, processed the tone, and decided the conversation was no longer a talk show segment. It was now a platform for truth that would not be diluted to punchlines or soft lobs of faux controversy. She leaned forward slowly, her voice cool and sharp, and said, "When the air you breathe is killing you, there's no such thing as enough marching." And what followed wasn't a raised voice or theatrical outburst, but a steady, scalpel-like dissection of political inaction, media complacency, and the moral laziness of shows that prioritize audience comfort over uncomfortable realities. And while Jimmy tried repeatedly to steer things back to safer ground, bringing up her movies, her legacy, even joking about the days of Barbarella, Jane refused to be derailed, calling out not just politicians, but networks, studios, and yes, hosts who laugh the truth away when it gets too close to ratings. And with every response, she peeled back layers of irony and indifference with the precision of someone who spent decades battling both Hollywood's illusions and Washington's cowardice. Her every word met with a mix of awe and tension from the live audience, who weren't sure whether they were witnessing a breakdown or a breakthrough, until Jimmy, visibly flustered and losing control of his own set, tried to defuse the moment by saying, "Look, Jane, it's just a show. We're just trying to have a good time." To which she replied, "That's the problem, Jimmy. Good time for whom? Because for a lot of people, there's nothing entertaining about what's happening outside your studio lights." And that's when the producers, scrambling behind the scenes, made the decision to go to an early commercial, not to save face, but to pause what they no longer knew how to manage. And as the screen faded to black, Jane remained seated, arms crossed calmly, the only person in the room seemingly unfazed by the implosion of late-night protocol. And when the cameras returned, minutes later, she was gone. Not escorted, not dragged out, but walked herself off the set. By choice or by forceful suggestion, no one could confirm. And the interview segment was never uploaded to YouTube, never aired again, replaced in reruns by an older, safer guest appearance from a stand-up comic whose biggest concern was taco, trucks and hangovers. But the moment couldn't be buried, not in the age of smartphones and live streams. And soon the footage leaked. First a blurry clip on TikTok, then the full uncut segment on Reddit and alternative media pages, and with it came a firestorm of reaction. Some praised Jane for her bravery, others accused her of hijacking the show. But nearly all agreed on one thing. What she said couldn't be unseen or unheard, and it wasn't just about climate change or government betrayal or celebrity apathy. It was about truth, and the increasingly rare courage it takes to tell it in spaces built to avoid it. And as hashtags like #Fonda Speaks and Kimmel Collapse trended for days, late-night hosts across networks scrambled to reassess their content strategies, with behind-the-scenes conversations taking place about how to handle guests like her in the future. But Jane herself didn't flinch from the controversy. In fact, she embraced it, appearing days later in a viral Instagram live video, where she calmly stated, They didn't kick me off because I was rude. They kicked me off because I was real, and from there the narrative took on a life of its own, sparking op-eds in major newspapers, heated panel discussions, and even calls from young activists urging networks to Fonda-proof their shows, not by banning her, but by preparing themselves to meet her level of conviction. And while Jimmy tried to laugh it off in later monologues with jokes like, "Remind me never to argue with an 80-year-old with more fight than Congress." True. The sting of being steamrolled on his own platform lingered in the collective media memory, solidifying the moment as more than just viral drama, but a cultural checkpoint, a televised reminder that sometimes truth walks into the room dressed as an old woman with a steel spine and refuses to sit quietly while the world claps for complacency, and whether people loved her for it or wished she'd stayed in her Hollywood lane. They couldn't deny what had happened that night. Jane Fonda came in not to entertain, but to confront, and though the show tried to edit her out, they couldn't erase the impact of what she left behind, an echo that kept ringing long after the applause machines were turned off.